Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Besma. I'm the Palestine Education Director at PAC. We are honored to have you today, with members of the Red Nation, for a Zoom call in preparation of the National Day of Mourning. So to get us started, can you each introduce yourselves, your personal backgrounds, as well as your activist work or anything else you want to share?
Sure. My name is Mayra Oliva. I am from Mexico. I also have Panamanian descent. So I joined the Red Nation a couple of years ago, and I'm a social anthropologist and interpreter.
Tamu, everybody. Hello, my name is Justine Tiba. I am from the pueblos of Acoma, Santa Clara, and Tesuque in New Mexico, and I am a member of Red Nation since 2018. And I also work for our media offshoot, Red Media, and I do a lot of work on the Red Nation podcast.
Ja, she Demetrius Johnson Dashijine, Twitchini Nishla, Ado Sinanjini Bashichin, Zenjikine Edishacheda, Twitchini Edishinale, Twithana de Nasha, Ado Akotego de Nishla. My name is Demetrius Johnson. I've been a member of the Red Nation for about 10 years now. And yeah, it's good to be here.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. It's always a pleasure to have you. So we could just get started. How does the National Day of Mourning resonate with you and your community?
So, the Red Nation came out to National Day of Mourning 2 years ago, and before that, other members of the Red Nation have gone to National Day of Mourning. On the podcast, I was listening to one of the first episodes, which are one of our main hosts, Nick, interviewed the organizers of National Day of Mourning, and something that really stuck with me is he says that National Day of Mourning is basically a counter narrative that cuts through all of the settler colonial ideology that allows Thanksgiving to happen. And I think as an Indigenous person, one of the biggest things that we face, in this day and age is just regular erasure. And going to National Day of Mourning is like one of the biggest affirmations of like the one and only national holiday that involves Indigenous people is about how we're supposedly hand in hand with these pilgrims and allowed them to come and colonize us and genocide us, and to see a counter narrative happen in real life at the site that they say that it happened is something so powerful. And for my community, I come from the Southwest. We weren't colonized by the United States first, or European, or Britain first. We were colonized by the Spanish first, and then now the U.S. Empire. So how it materializes here in the East is really different than how it is in the Southwest. And so I believe that, like every Indigenous person should visit National Day of Mourning and really see um, like the physical origin of where this all happens, and it really just changes you. And so coming out here, I actually, with our media work, want to bring that message back to my people at home.
Yeah, I heard about the National Day of Mourning, geez, probably about 10 years ago was the first time, maybe longer. I think I just graduated high school. But it was also the time of like me becoming more aware and like more politicized of like the actual indigenous history of like this country. And when I first heard about it and just learning about like how everything that I've learned up to this point was like wrong. And like I actually had to seek out, I don't know, true history or like true information outside of like what I was taught in public schools. I was very upset. It was like to the point, like because Native people, they don't necessarily like love Thanksgiving. They just love like having the time off and having family come together and like sharing like a good meal with each other. But I actually like in my family like protested even like that meal, and I was just so upset. I was like, why are we celebrating this day? Like, don't you know there was a massacre that happened? Um, but for me, like what National Day of Mourning represents now is like that true history, and I think like the continuing retelling of like actual history is becoming more and more important, given like what we're entering to in this political climate. Like they're even trying to gaslight us and like tell us like a genocide isn't happening in Palestine and Gaza. And it's like for us, like we have to keep reiterating like what a genocide is, like what a massacre is, and like we can't let go of like what is actual true history, because when that happens, then settler colonialism becomes normalized and genocide becomes normalized. And I think that's why like the National Day of Mourning is very, very important. And yeah, thank you for all the organizers to keep this tradition going.
I would just add that in Mexico, a lot of the national holidays of the United States sometimes are embraced as part of like a narrative of the territory, right? Like people usually think of Thanksgiving, or at least in the spaces that I grew up, as a good thing, as this like moment of family time, and it's completely like normalized as a holiday without any questioning of what it entailed at the beginning to of the history of this nation, right? Like people don't even question that, and so I think it's important to um, in the case of like um, Latin audiences and people in the United States that are from Latin America, to understand also that even though they may embrace the holiday as a way to assert their origins and their nationality, their cuisine, because that happens a lot. Like people take advantage of this moment of family to say, oh, I'm from here, so we're gonna cook our food, we're gonna be thankful, be grateful, like I don't know, that part is what I think it's very interesting to analyze and criticize, how it's normalized and how it's also turned into like you have to be empathetic about this holiday, like how could you not be thankful, or how could you not be gracious, and so like how sort of like to me that's it's been like something that I try to bring to the conversation, have a critique about what this holiday actually means or where it comes from, because people, at least in Latin America, they probably have no idea. And it's not rare, because in Mexico we have many holidays like that, where the so-called conquest is sort of embellished as a good thing, or civilization came and it's great that this happened, and so on and so forth. So it's important to recognize the differences in the territories, but also the similarities in the colonization processes, where national endeavors or national narratives create this idea of these holidays and basically rewrite the history.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you already touched on so much of what I was gonna ask you, so I guess I'll shift my next question a little bit. I think it's really interesting that you said and that well, we have to be like everyone's like, well, the idea behind Thanksgiving is you're thankful and you're with family. What's wrong with that? So maybe if any of you want to talk a little bit more about what is it, we know obviously the history, but what's problematic or what should people do today as they are using the time, say, just to come together with family? What do you recommend or what do you encourage people in solidarity to do to remain, aware and to remain engaged with the Indigenous struggle, especially at this time?
So, there's a few things. Obviously, maybe put some energy into learning the true history of the U.S. and the first Thanksgiving, the um, United New England American Indians,
Of New England.
or the United American Indians of New England. I always get those words mixed up. They have so many resources, and I really recommend that people actually watch the live stream of National Day of Mourning. I wasn't able to physically go last year, so that's what I did. Was watch the live stream, ask people in your families to watch the live stream, and look up past National Day of Mourning events. Number one. Number two, what a lot of people do, I personally haven't done this, and I know it's not for everybody, but I do know that there are a lot of people who fast on National Day of Mourning, and tomorrow we'll actually be surrounded by people who will be fasting. And then third, um, I I just want people to, because one thing that I have sort of, and this isn't any kind of excuse for anybody, but I do also see how for people who and families who like don't care about Thanksgiving, they're just happy they have a day off. They're just happy they have a day off the grind. Most of the people in the working class are just using this time to enjoy with their family, and unfortunately it's to be thankful and grateful for the genocide of indigenous peoples. But I just want people to really use that time with their family to uh to like just not honor settler colonialism, to um and to just not like, if you're gonna have a fancy meal on Thanksgiving, don't do it for Thanksgiving. Do it just simply because you have time with your family. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, that's kind of anticlimactic, I'm sorry, but maybe the comments have something better to say.
I think I think people have like a lot of assumptions about like the history of Thanksgiving, or we were taught very wrongly about what Thanksgiving is. Um, the origin of Thanksgiving, it was celebrating a genocide, or it was celebrating a massacre. Um, the governor of Massachusetts at that time, after the Pequot Indians or Native people helped these settlers come in, they massacred them, and the governor of that time declared like, hey, like we're happy, we're thankful for God for like allowing us to like receive like this victory over these Indians. Um, and it was a celebration of genocide. It was a celebration of killing of Native people, and how that is portrayed and how that was written in history is like very wrong. And even like why like Thanksgiving is a national holiday is because Abraham Lincoln declared it so after the Civil War, to promote unity. And like, just even if you just like know like those two tidbits of like history, you'll understand like, oh, okay, so like this national holiday is based on the genocide of Native people. And for me, like, why that's important is it again, like it just highlights like why what is happening in Palestine and Gaza is like so normalized, and like why there's so little media coverage, why there's so like little education about like why what is happening is traces back to like history of like indigenous people, and like why this is normalized, and now like why Gaza is normalized. And so yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's so true and so important to mention those particular historic moments, because also I would just add to what my comrades had said, that there's also this huge economic aspect of it, right? Like there's this like embracing of like this holidays as this like, like, oh, let's go and shop, let's go and, you know make sure we monetize all this and make sure that we go out of the way and spend as much money as we can. And because it's like this mix of economic and religious aspect of it. Like it's almost like this is the time to think, this is the time to go out of, throw everything out the window and just enjoy, right? But what are the processes, the economic processes behind that? Because that's part of this machinery of this narrative, is also to continue producing and reproducing capitalism. So uh, I think that that's one way that we can also talk to people about, like, you know, um, how you consume. And this goes for Christmas and other holidays of the season, that it has more to do with how you act critically. So it's not just about how you think, but also how you act and how you can impact people, uh, both, highlighting this narrative or, standing against it actively. So, yeah.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate this. Think just so we'll just end off with one last question. How do you hope future generations will reinterpret or reshape the narratives around this problematic holiday?
Well, I think what was important for me too in learning about the history of Thanksgiving is like breaking down like the actors and what like breaking down the actors of like like this fabricated Thanksgiving. You have the Pequot and like Wampanoag Native people, and then you have like these pilgrims. And what I learned from actually the organizers of the National Day of Mourning is like what a pilgrim is and like the history of that. And so just really succinctly, like that term wasn't created for them like almost 200 years after they landed here, and that was it, that term was created as a term of control, because we say like this country is like a nation of immigrants, but um, when you immigrate to a country, you're expected to um, abide by like what is already existing here, the nation structure, and what was already here were like indigenous nations. They didn't come here to like to come assimilate into our ways. They destroyed it. Um, and these so-called pilgrims, these first settlers, they created a name for themselves 200 years later. And when other immigrants came, like Catholic immigrants, um, uh, Spanish immigrants, other kinds of immigrants started coming to this country, these original pilgrims didn't like it, and so they said, let's call ourselves pilgrims. Let's make us the actual first settlers, and they have to assimilate to our ways. And Catholicism, all these other forms of religion that are coming to the country, we don't want that. Um, uh, and like that was the creation of the pilgrim, and it was a form of control. It was a form of like we don't want diversity. We want everyone to like be us. And I think that's really important to consider. And I'm always going to point to like I don't know everything. Like everything makes sense the more I look at the more I relate my own history to Palestinians in Gaza and what is happening. It's the same story. So
Absolutely. I hope that people learn the true meaning of National Day of Mourning, and I think one of the things that is like very highlighted, it's like the foundation of National Day of Mourning, is the internationalism wrapped up in all of it. The organizers of National Day of Mourning don't put the event on to only recognize indigenous peoples of the United States, but the entire world. In their flyer that they have been circulating for several years, they have the Palestinian flag even before October of 2023. And when the Red Nation went to National Day of Mourning for the first time as an official delegation, it was actually because of our Palestinian comrade in PYM, who was inspired by seeing the Palestinian flag on the flyer, and he said, This event is calling me. Do you think Red Nation would be willing to go to National Day of Mourning?" So it was actually a Palestinian comrade who took us out there for the first time. And in that, the National Day of Mourning wasn't only highlighting Palestine, they were highlighting like Bolivia, Puerto Rico, just all of these places of struggle where indigenous people are actively resisting settler colonialism. And like that's the true meaning of National Day of Mourning. It's a day of mourning for indigenous people across the world, and especially now in this day of the indigenous people of Palestine, who are suffering just immensely right now. And I you know, and like the goal of these kinds of events are, are decolonial in nature, because the settler state, whether it be the United States, Israel, New Zealand, Australia, all of these settler states that exist across the world are built on settler colonial ideology, which is always a fragile ideology. It is, and so when you look at a settler state who bases their material existence on an idea, which is become the new native, get rid of the native so we can be the new native, showing up and being present physically and saying the truth, just the bare truth by itself, that we are still here and that your settler colonial project is a failure because I'm still here. And that is like what I wish people would understand on a global scale. So really I just wish the goals of National Day of Mourning to take place worldwide, where we're actively resisting um, settler colonial ideology, and really just like to go to Plymouth, Plymouth Rock in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and seeing the replication of the Mayflower. I think they call it Mayflower 2 or something. Like, and to show up like in in groups of indigenous peoples and saying like no is so powerful, and it echoes just across the world, literally across the world. And so um ultimately wrapped up in this truth telling is really the goals of decolonization for indigenous people worldwide.
Yeah, I would just shortly say that, right? That as Justine just said, and um, celebrating Thanksgiving is celebrating a colonial holiday. So all colonialisms of the world should look at Palestine and think and be empathetic about the stories that we're trying to talk about, the true stories that we're trying to talk about, as what the horror is unfolding in Palestine, so that that may not be ever again something to celebrate, or something that is revisioned and changed and turned into and shifted into something good. So I think it, as she just said, it's a big decolonial act. So it's an active decolonization, and it's action, it's discourse, it's narrative, it's constant, and just invite people to participate and get involved.
That was beautiful. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time, especially while you're there. Think of us. I will definitely be on the live stream, watching you and being there with you in solidarity. Thank you all so much, and I hope that we can talk to you again soon.
Thank
Thank you.
you,
Yeah.
Kadoha. Thank you for having us.
Okay.